The call. The gun felt lighter than the silence in the room. Dominic Caruso stood at the head of a long oak table, his shadow stretching across 3 men who hadn't dared to breathe in 40 seconds. This was his world. A kingdom built on fear, cemented by blood, and ruled by a man who had forgotten how to feel anything except power. The deal was simple: territories, money, loyalty sworn in exchange for protection. The men across from him knew the rules. Everyone in this city knew the rules. Cross Dominic Caruso, and you disappear. His phone vibrated against the table. He ignored it. No call was worth more than this moment, the moment when men realized they were nothing in his presence. It vibrated again, and again. His right hand, Marco, leaned close. "Boss, it's urgent." Dominic's jaw tightened. He lifted a single finger, the universal signal for silence, and answered the call without excusing himself. "Speak." The voice on the other end was Lorenzo, his oldest informant. A man who never called unless the world was ending. "They say she's dying." Dominic's hand stopped mid-motion. His chest contracted before his mind could process the words. "Who?" "Elena. She's at St. Michael's." "It doesn't look good." The room seemed to tilt. The 3 men at the table noticed the shift in his face, a flicker of something they had never seen before. Vulnerability, just for a second. Then it was gone, buried beneath granite. "I'm coming." He ended the call. The deal was forgotten. The men were forgotten. Everything was forgotten except the name that had haunted him for 5 years. Elena, the ghost he tried to forget. They had met in another life. Dominic was already powerful then, a prince in a criminal empire, learning to become a king. Elena was a nurse. Ordinary. Kind. The kind of woman who smiled at strangers and believed people could change. She believed he could change. For 2 years she was his secret, his escape, the only door he could walk through and feel like a human being instead of a monster. She made him laugh. She challenged him. She looked at him like he was more than the sum of his sins. And he loved her. He loved her in a way that terrified him. But love is dangerous for men like Dominic Caruso. Creates weaknesses. Enemies notice weaknesses. One night, a rival family discovered her existence. They didn't touch her, they didn't have to. They sent a photograph of her leaving her apartment, her address written on the back. The message was clear: "We know where your heart is." Dominic made a decision that night. A decision that broke something inside him that never healed. He ended it. Not gently. Not with an explanation. He told her she meant nothing. He told her she was a distraction. A mistake. He watched the light drain from her eyes, watched her tears fall, and he said nothing to comfort her. He walked away, and he never looked back. He told himself it was protection. He told himself he was saving her life by destroying her heart. Maybe it was true. Maybe he just wasn't strong enough to fight for her. Either way, Elena disappeared from his world. She left the city, started over, built a life without him. And Dominic became colder, harder, more ruthless, because a man who has nothing to lose can never be hurt again. The hospital. The hospital smelled nothing like power. Dominic walked through the emergency entrance with Marco at his side. And for the first time in years, no one recognized him. No one feared him. He was just a man in an expensive coat, walking past crying families and exhausted nurses. Invisible. The woman at the front desk barely looked up. Name of patient? Elena Vance. Typing. Scrolling. A pause. 3rd floor. Room 312. Are you family? Family. The word burned. Yes, he said. The elevator ride felt eternal. Marco stayed silent, watching his boss with the same expression he'd worn when they buried Dominic's father. A funeral without tears, a goodbye without closure. Something was different now. Marco could feel it. Room 312 was at the end of a long corridor. A doctor stood outside, speaking in low tones to a nurse. They stopped when they saw Dominic approach. "Are you here for Miss Vance?" "Yes." The doctor hesitated. "She's stable for now." But there were complications. The pregnancy. Dominic's entire body went rigid. "The what?" The doctor blinked. "The pregnancy. She's in labor. We're monitoring her closely, but she lost consciousness earlier. She's awake now but weak. We're preparing for an emergency delivery if her condition worsens." Dominic heard the words, but they didn't make sense. Pregnancy, labor, emergency. His mind traveled backward, counting months, remembering dates. Their last night together. The night before he destroyed everything. Couldn't be, but it was. He pushed past the doctor and opened the door. And there she was. Elena, pale, thin, hooked up to monitors that beeped in rhythm with her fragile heartbeat. Her dark hair was spread across the pillow like a memory. Her eyes, those beautiful, trusting eyes, were closed. Then they opened. She saw him, and she didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't ask him why he was there. She just looked at him with an expression he couldn't name. Exhaustion, resignation, maybe a whisper of something that used to be love. "You came," she whispered. Dominic couldn't move, couldn't speak. He stood at the threshold of the room like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, unsure whether to fall or fly. "I didn't know," he finally said. "I didn't know you were. I know. Why didn't you tell me?" She turned her face away. "Because I didn't want this. I didn't want our child to grow up in your world. I didn't want him to know what his father does. What his father is. Him. A son." Dominic's legs nearly gave out. The cry. The next 2 hours were a blur. Elena's condition worsened. The doctors rushed in, voices urgent, machines screaming warnings. Dominic was pushed to the corner of the room, helpless, watching the woman he had abandoned fight for her life and the life of their child. He had faced death before. He had caused death before. But this was different. This was the one thing he couldn't control. The one thing his money, his power, his name couldn't fix. He watched Elena's face twist in pain. He watched her grip the bedsheets with white-knuckled hands. He watched the doctors exchange glances that said more than their words. And then, a cry. Sharp. Alive. Piercing. The sound cut through every wall Dominic had ever built. It sliced through the armor he'd worn for 20 years. It reached inside his chest and grabbed something he thought had died long ago. His heart. The nurse lifted a small, squirming figure wrapped in blue. The baby's cry filled the room. Angry, demanding, beautiful. "It's a boy," the nurse announced. Dominic couldn't breathe. The doctors continued working on Elena, stabilizing her, murmuring reassurances. But Dominic's eyes were locked on the baby. The nurse hesitated, then slowly approached him. "Would you like to hold him?" He should have said no. He should have walked away. That's what the old Dominic would have done. But the old Dominic was dying. He reached out. His hands that had held guns, signed death warrants, built empires, trembled as they received the tiny life. The baby stopped crying. He opened his eyes. Dark eyes. Familiar eyes. His eyes. Dominic looked down at his son, and something shattered inside him. Every lie he'd ever told himself. Every justification, every excuse. This was his blood, his legacy, his chance, his redemption. She's stable, the doctor announced. She made it through. She's going to be okay. Dominic didn't look up. He couldn't. He was still staring at the baby, at the perfect, innocent face that knew nothing of blood or power or sin. Elena's weak voice drifted across the room. Dominic! He finally looked at her. Tears were sliding down her cheeks. Silent, exhausted tears. I never wanted your world to touch him, she whispered. But it already had. The war within. For 3 days, Dominic didn't leave the hospital. He sat in the chair beside Elena's bed, watching her sleep, watching nurses come and go, watching his son. They hadn't named him yet. Rest in the bassinet. Marco brought reports. Problems were escalating. The deal that had been interrupted was collapsing. Rival families sensed weakness. Rumors were spreading. The king had abandoned his throne. Dominic listened to all of it, and for the first time in his life he didn't care. On the 4th day, Elena was strong enough to sit up. She watched him hold the baby with an expression he couldn't read. You can't stay, she finally said. I know. This changes nothing. He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since he'd arrived. It changes everything. You'll go back to your world. You'll make deals and hurt people and pretend this never happened. That's who you are. That's who I was. People don't change, Dominic. Maybe not, but I can try. She laughed. It was bitter, hollow. Try? Do you know what I went through when you left? Do you know how many nights I cried, wondering what I did wrong? Wondering if I was ever real to you. You were the only real thing I ever had. Then why did you leave? The question hung in the air. The truth he'd never spoken. The confession he'd buried for 5 years. Because I was afraid, he said quietly. I was afraid that if you stayed, someone would use you to destroy me. I was afraid that loving you made me weak. So I cut you out. I convinced myself it was protection. But it wasn't. He paused, his voice breaking. It was cowardice. And it's the worst thing I've ever done. Elena stared at him. Her anger flickered, wavered, softened into something more complicated. Pain. Understanding. The remnants of a love that had never fully died. I can't forgive you, she whispered. I'm not asking you to. Then what are you asking? Dominic looked at his son, at the tiny fingers curled into fists, at the peaceful face that trusted the world completely. Let me be his father. Let me try. Not the kind of father I had, not a monster who teaches his son to become a monster. A real father. One who protects him from everything, even from myself. Elena's tears returned. She didn't wipe them away. I don't know if I can trust you. Then let me earn it. The betrayal. But Dominic's world didn't wait for redemption. On the 6th day, while he was sitting with Elena, his phone rang. It was Marco. His voice was urgent, wrong. Boss, we have a problem. What kind? Victor Alenko, Dominic's underboss, his second in command. The man he'd trusted with his empire while he was gone. He's making moves. He told the council you're finished. That you've gone soft. He's calling for a vote. Dominic's blood went cold. In his world, a vote meant one thing. Succession, usually by force. Where is he? The warehouse on 5th. He's got half your men with him. The other half are waiting for your orders. Dominic closed his eyes. He knew what this meant. He knew what he had to do. Go back. Reclaim his throne. Eliminate the threat. Become the monster again. But when he opened his eyes, he saw Elena watching him. He saw his son sleeping peacefully. And he knew. "I'm not coming back," he said. "Boss, you heard me. I'm done." Marco was silent for a long moment. "They'll come for you. Victor won't let you walk away." "I know. Then what do you want me to do?" Dominic made the hardest decision of his life. Take the men who are still loyal. Get them out. Anyone who wants to disappear, help them do it. Anyone who wants to stay and fight for Victor, let them. It's over. And you, I'll handle what comes next. He ended the call. Elena was watching him with wide eyes. What's happening? My world is falling apart. And I'm letting it. You can't just walk away from. I can. And I am. He stood up, crossed to the bassinet, and lifted his son gently. The baby stirred, made a soft sound, then settled against his chest. "I built an empire," Dominic said quietly. "I thought it made me strong, but it just made me alone. It took everything that mattered and gave me nothing but fear in return." He turned to face Elena. "I'm done. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing him. I'm choosing whatever future we can have, even if it's not with you. Even if you never forgive me." The reckoning. Victor came that night. 3 cars. 8 men. They surrounded the hospital like wolves circling wounded prey. Dominic had expected this. He was waiting in the parking garage, alone, when Victor stepped out of the lead vehicle. "You really have gone soft," Victor said, a cruel smile on his face. The great Dominic Caruso hiding in a hospital. For what? A woman? A baby? For something you'll never understand. Victor laughed. "You think you can walk away? You think there's a door out of this life? There's always a door. Most men are too afraid to look for it." Victor's smile faded. "You're a dead man, Dominic. You, the woman, the child. All of you." Dominic didn't flinch. He didn't reach for a weapon. He just stood there, calm, certain. "You're going to let them go," he said quietly. "Elena and my son. They're going to walk out of this city, and you're never going to touch them." "And why would I do that?" "Because I recorded every conversation we've ever had. Every deal. Every bribe. Every name. It's in a safe deposit box that opens automatically if I don't check in every 12 hours. If anything happens to them, anything, it all goes public. The police, the FBI, the rivals who would love to see you burn." Victor's face went pale. "You're bluffing. Try me." The silence stretched. Victor's men shifted nervously. This wasn't the execution they'd been promised. "You let them go," Dominic repeated. "You let me walk away, and in return those recordings stay buried. You get the empire. I get my family." Victor's jaw clenched. His hands trembled with rage. But he was a businessman, and he knew a losing hand when he saw one. "Fine," he spat. "Take your family. Run. Hide. But know this, you'll never be free. You'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder. I've been doing that my whole life. At least now I'll have something worth protecting." Victor turned and walked back to his car. His men followed. The engines roared. The tires screamed. And then they were gone. The beginning. Elena was released from the hospital 3 days later. Dominic arranged everything. A safe house in another state, new identities, enough money to start over. He did it quietly, expecting her to take their son and disappear without him. But she didn't. On the morning they were supposed to leave, she found him sitting alone in the hospital lobby, staring at his hands. "You're not coming," she said. "I thought you'd want it that way." She sat down beside him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. I spent 5 years hating you, she said quietly. I told myself you were heartless, a monster, but a monster wouldn't have stayed. A monster wouldn't have given up everything. Dominic looked at her. I can't promise you I'm a good man, he said. I've done things that can't be forgiven. I've hurt people. I've destroyed lives. I know. Then why are you here? She reached over and took his hand. Her fingers were warm against his cold skin. Because I saw the way you held him. I saw the way you looked at him. And I realized that's not who you were. That's who you could be. Dominic's eyes burned with tears. He'd never allowed himself to cry. I don't know if I can be better. Then we'll figure it out together. The name. 1 year later. The farmhouse was small, quiet, surrounded by fields that stretched to the horizon. No neighbors, no visitors, just the wind, the sunlight, and the sound of a baby laughing. Dominic stood on the porch, watching his son take his first steps across the grass. Elena sat nearby, her face full of a joy he had never seen before. The boy stumbled, fell, and looked up at his father with those familiar dark eyes. Dominic walked over, knelt down, and lifted him gently. It's okay, Marco, he whispered. I've got you. They had named him after the only man who had stayed loyal to the end. Marco had helped them disappear, then vanished himself. Dominic didn't know where he was, but he hoped someday they would meet again. Elena joined them, wrapping her arms around Dominic from behind. I never thought I'd see you like this, she murmured. Like what? At peace. He looked out at the fields, at the endless sky, at the life he'd never believed he deserved. I'm not sure I am, he admitted. I still think about who I was, what I did. It doesn't go away. It's not supposed to. She rested her head against his shoulder. But you're still here. You're still trying. That's enough. Dominic held his son close. He felt the tiny heartbeat against his chest, the warmth, the trust. And for the first time in his life, the Mafia boss, no, the father, felt something he'd never known before. Hope. Some men are born into darkness. Some men create it. But the rarest men, the ones who matter, find a single light and spend the rest of their lives protecting it. Dominic Caruso was all three, and in the end, it wasn't power that saved him. It was a cry in a hospital room, a son who saw his father before his father saw himself, and a love that refused to die, even when it had every right to.